The Lagos sun beat down mercilessly on the Oyingbo market, turning the corrugated iron roofs into griddles. Beneath one of those roofs, in a cramped stall that smelled of fresh tomatoes and peppers, 5-year-old Taiwo sat on an upturned crate, swinging his legs and watching his mother haggle with customers. "Madam, this tomatoes is fresh, oh. I bring them from the farm this morning," his mother called out, her voice competing with 100 other traders in the bustling marketplace. That was the day everything changed. A sleek black SUV pulled up near the entrance of the market, and out stepped a woman who looked like she had walked straight out of a television commercial. Her wrapper was pristine Ankara, her gold jewelry caught the sunlight, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never worried about where her next meal would come from. Behind her, a small boy clutched her hand, looking uncomfortable in his crisp white shirt and pressed shorts. "Ah, Mama Taiwo," the woman called out, her face breaking into a warm smile that transformed her elegant features. "I came as I promised. Your tomatoes are the best in all Lagos, I swear." Taiwo's mother, surprised and pleased, quickly wiped her hands on her wrapper and greeted her customer. "Ah, Mrs. Okonko, welcome, ma. You remember the way to my small shop? I am honored." As the two women talked and laughed, conducting their business with the easy familiarity of old friends, Taiwo found himself staring at the boy. The boy stared back. Then, slowly, the boy smiled. "My name is Obika," the boy said shyly. "What's yours?" "Taiwo," he replied, suddenly conscious of his worn shorts and faded t-shirt. "Do you want to play?" Obika asked, and just like that, as simply as children do things, a friendship was born. While Mrs. Okonko carefully selected her tomatoes and caught up with Mama Taiwo about life, the two boys found a relatively clear corner of the market and played a game with bottle caps Taiwo had collected. Obika had never played with bottle caps before. At home, he had remote-controlled cars, video games, and a room full of toys that would make any child dizzy with joy. But here, in this dusty corner of Oyingbo market, playing a simple game with a boy he had just met, Obika felt something he rarely experienced: genuine, uncomplicated fun. From that day forward, every time Mrs. Okonko came to buy tomatoes, which became a weekly ritual, the boys would play together. 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. It wasn't much, but it was enough to build something real. As the years passed, the contrast between the boys' lives became more pronounced, yet their friendship only deepened. Taiwo attended a struggling public primary school where 5 students shared a single desk, and textbooks were precious commodities passed down through generations until they fell apart. He would wake up at 4:30 a.m. to help his mother prepare for the market, carry heavy baskets, and only then rush to school, often arriving late and sweaty. Obika, meanwhile, attended one of the most expensive private schools in Lagos, where the classrooms had air conditioning and each student had their own iPad for learning. His driver dropped him off every morning, and his afternoons were filled with piano lessons, swimming classes, and French tutoring. Yet, every Saturday, when Mrs. Okonko made her weekly trip to the market, the boys found each other. They would sit behind Mama Taiwo's store, and Taiwo would listen with wide eyes as Obika described his school, his toys, his trips to Dubai and London. In turn, Obika listened as Taiwo talked about his dreams. Dreams so big they seemed impossible for a boy from Oyingbo market. "When I grow up," Taiwo would say, his eyes blazing with determination, "I'm going to be somebody. I'm going to build things that help people. I'm going to make my mama proud." Obika, in contrast, would shrug. "I don't need to do anything. My papa has already made all the money we'll ever need. He owns 3 factories and 2 hotels. When I grow up, I'll just enjoy life, I guess." It was during one of these Saturday conversations, when the boys were 12 years old, that Taiwo said something that would echo through the years ahead. "Obika, you don't understand. You're starting the race halfway to the finish line while the rest of us are still at the starting blocks. You have advantages I can only dream about. Good schools, connections, money for opportunities. If you waste all of that, it would be like having wings and choosing to walk." Obika laughed it off then. He was 12 after all, and 12-year-olds rarely think about the future in serious terms. But Mama Taiwo, who had been listening from her stall, caught Mrs. Okonko's eye. The two women shared a look that spoke volumes. One Saturday evening, about 6 months later, Mrs. Okonko didn't leave the market at her usual time. Instead, she sat down on the bench beside Mama Taiwo's stall and said, "My friend, I want to talk to you about something important." Mama Taiwo's heart raced. Had she offended her wealthy customer somehow? Had Taiwo done something wrong? "I've been watching your son," Mrs. Okonko continued. "He is a brilliant boy, smart, respectful, hungry to learn. It pains me to see such potential trapped by circumstances." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "My husband and I have been blessed beyond measure. God has given us more than we could ever spend. And lately, I've been thinking, what is an extra child to us? The money we spend on one weekend trip could change Taiwo's entire life." Mama Taiwo's hands began to tremble. "I want to propose something," Mrs. Okonko said. "Let Taiwo come and live with us as our ward. We'll put him in the same school as Obika, feed him, clothe him, treat him like family. Your son has a gift. Let us help him unwrap it." Tears streamed down Mama Taiwo's face. She tried to speak but couldn't find words big enough to contain her gratitude. That night, when she told Taiwo the news, the 13-year-old boy cried too, not from sadness but from the overwhelming weight of opportunity suddenly placed on his young shoulders. "Mama," he said through his tears, "I promise you, I will not waste this chance. I will make you proud. I will make them proud. I will make something of myself." And so, Taiwo moved into the Okonko mansion in Ikoyi, a sprawling compound with a swimming pool, gardens, and more rooms than he could count. He had his own bedroom, the first time he had ever slept in a room by himself. He had a desk for studying, a wardrobe for clothes, and access to opportunities he had never imagined. But he never forgot where he came from. Corona Secondary School was one of the best private schools in Lagos, and walking through its gates for the first time, Taiwo felt like he had stepped into another world. The buildings were modern and gleaming, the sports facilities were worthy of the university, and the other students carried themselves with the casual confidence of children who had never known struggle. Obika was thrilled to have his best friend at the same school. Finally, someone who liked him for who he was, not for his father's money. The two boys were inseparable. They shared classes, ate lunch together, and played football on the same team. But their approaches to school couldn't be more different. Taiwo attacked his studies with ferocious intensity. Every class was a gift, every textbook a treasure. He stayed up late studying, asked questions until his teachers grew weary, and volunteered for every academic competition. He knew deep in his bones that education was his only ladder out of poverty, and he climbed it with everything he had. Obika, meanwhile, coasted. He was naturally intelligent and could pass his exams with minimal effort, but he saw no reason to push himself. School was something to get through, not something to excel in. He was more interested in music. He had started playing the guitar and writing songs, and he spent his free time dreaming of becoming a famous musician. "Books are for people who need to make money," Obika would say with a laugh. "I'm already set for life. I just want to make music that touches people's souls." "Music is beautiful," Taiwo would reply patiently, "but you don't neglect your education. You can do both. Imagine if you combined your talent with a solid education. You could build a music empire, not just make songs." But Obika wasn't interested in empires. He just wanted to play his guitar. The 5 years of secondary school passed in a blur. Taiwo graduated as the best student in his set, sweeping awards in mathematics, sciences, and winning the school's prize for most outstanding student. Obika graduated comfortably in the middle of the class. His report card showed B's and C's. Good enough, but unremarkable. Mr. Okonko, Obika's father, was a stern man who believed in hard work and excellence. He looked at his son's mediocre results with barely concealed disappointment, but he said nothing. He had already decided that university would be the wake-up call his son needed. He was wrong. Covenant University was one of Nigeria's premier private institutions, known for its rigorous academics and strict discipline. Both boys gained admission, Taiwo to study software engineering, Obika to study business administration, his father's choice. The campus was beautiful, sprawling across well-manicured grounds with modern facilities that rivaled anything in Europe. For Taiwo, it was paradise. He had access to computer labs with the latest software, libraries stocked with thousands of books, and professors who were leaders in their fields. For Obika, it was a prison. The strict rules, mandatory chapel attendance, no mixing of genders, lights out at 11 p.m. chafed against his free spirit. He wanted to make music, to be creative, to live life on his own terms. Business administration bored him to tears. What did he care about financial statements and marketing strategies? His father's businesses practically ran themselves. It started small. Obika would skip a class here and there to work on a new song. Then he started missing entire days, holed up in his dorm room with his guitar and his laptop, recording tracks that he was sure would make him famous. Taiwo, listen to this, he would say excitedly. This is the one. This is going to blow up. Taiwo, who spent his nights coding and his days in classes, would listen patiently. He wanted to be supportive, but he also wanted to be honest. It's good, Obika, he would say carefully, but it's not great yet. You need more practice, more training, and you definitely need to keep up with your studies. What if the music doesn't work out? You need something to fall back on. Fall back on? Obika would laugh, though there was an edge to his laughter. Taiwo, my brother, you don't understand. When you are destined for greatness, you don't need a backup plan. Backup plans are for people who don't believe in themselves. As their second year progressed, Obika's obsession with music intensified. He discovered a recording studio in Lekki, run by a producer who claimed to have worked with some of Nigeria's biggest artists. The man promised Obika that with the right investment in professional recording time, he could make it big. The studio sessions were expensive, 150,000 naira per session, and the producer recommended at least 10 sessions to create an album that would shake the industry. Obika didn't have that kind of money in his personal account, but he had access to something else, his school fees account. Mr. Okonkwo had set up a dedicated account for each of his children's education expenses. Every semester, he would transfer money for tuition, accommodation, books, and living expenses. The account was supposed to be used only for educational purposes, but there was no one physically stopping Obika from withdrawing the money, and so he did. 1.5 million naira disappeared from his school fees account, funneled into studio sessions, equipment purchases, and music video production. Obika told himself it was an investment. Once his music blew up, he would make back 10 times what he spent. His father would see that he had made the right choice. Everyone would understand. Taiwo found out by accident. He had gone to Obika's dorm room to return a textbook and found bank statements scattered on the desk. The withdrawals were right there in black and white. Obika, what is this? Taiwo demanded, his voice shaking. Please tell me you didn't spend your school fees on studio sessions. Obika's face flushed with anger and shame. It's my money. My father gave it to me. He gave it to you for school, Taiwo shot back. Obika, please, I'm begging you. This is madness. Your music... Brother, I'm trying to be gentle here, but your music isn't ready. You need more training, more experience. You are making a huge mistake. You're just jealous, Obika shouted, though even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. You've always been jealous that I have money and you don't. You want me to be stuck in a boring job like you'll be, coding in some office for the rest of my life. Well, I want more than that. The words hung in the air between them like poison. Taiwo stood up slowly, his face unreadable. I've never been jealous of your money, Obika. I've been grateful for your family's generosity, and I've always wanted the best for you. But I can see now that you are determined to learn this lesson the hard way. I just pray the cost isn't too high. He walked out, and the two friends didn't speak for 3 months. The consequences came faster than Obika anticipated. First, the university sent a notice, his school fees were outstanding. When he couldn't pay, he was barred from taking his second semester exams. He tried to hide it, tried to figure out a way to fix it before his father found out. But Mr. Okonkwo found out everything eventually. He had built his business empire by paying attention to details, and when his accountant flagged unusual expenses from Obika's education account, the truth came tumbling out. The confrontation was explosive. "You used your school fees to record music?" Mr. Okonkwa's voice shook the walls of the family home during the semester break. "Music that no one wants to listen to? Music that won't even pay for a single day of the life you are accustomed to?" "You don't understand," Obika pleaded. "I'm building something. I just need more time, more investment." "More investment?" His father's laugh was bitter. "You want me to throw more money away? You've missed your exams. Your grades for the classes you did attend are terrible. You're failing, Obika, failing. While Taiwo, the boy who came from nothing, is top of his class, winning scholarships, making something of himself, and you, with every advantage in the world, are squandering it all on a pipe dream." But Mr. Okonkwa, for all his anger, loved his son. He paid the outstanding fees. He gave Obika one more chance. "Next semester, you will attend every class, you will pass your exams, and you will forget this music nonsense until you have a degree in your hand. Am I clear?" Obika nodded, but his heart wasn't in it. The reconciliation with Taiwo came a week later, awkward and stilted at first, but eventually warming back to their old friendship. Taiwo had never been able to stay mad at his friend for long. "I'm sorry," Obika said, "for what I said. You've never been anything but a true friend to me." "I'm sorry too," Taiwo replied, "for not finding a better way to tell you the truth. But Obika, please, you have to focus now. You have to get your degree. Do it for yourself, if not for your father." Obika promised he would. He lasted exactly one semester. Third year was when everything fell apart completely. Obika attended classes sporadically, submitted assignments late or not at all, and failed 3 out of 5 courses. His CGPA dropped to 1.8. The university's academic board placed him on probation. Meanwhile, Taiwo was thriving. He had discovered a passion for software development that bordered on obsession. He spent every spare moment coding, building applications, learning new programming languages. His projects caught the attention of his professors, who began to recommend him for competitions and opportunities. In their final year, while Taiwo was graduating with a first class and a CGPA of 4.87, Obika was being told that he had been expelled due to poor academic performance. Mr. Okonkwa didn't shout this time. He didn't rage. He simply sat in his study, looked at his son, and said in a cold, flat voice, "You have disappointed me beyond words. I gave you every advantage, every opportunity, and you threw it all away. From today, you are on your own. I will not finance your lifestyle anymore. I will not bail you out. I have other children who actually value education and hard work. Focus on them, I will." The next 5 years were a study in contrasts. Taiwo's graduation caught the attention of a fintech startup in Lagos that was making waves in the industry. They offered him an internship, unpaid, but with the promise of learning from some of the best developers in Africa. He took it without hesitation. 6 months into the internship, the company's American partner visited Lagos. She was a venture capitalist scouting for talent, and Taiwo's work on a mobile payment solution impressed her so much that she offered him an opportunity that changed his life: a sponsored work visa to join their development team in San Francisco. Taiwo called his mother, tears streaming down his face. "Mama, I'm going to America." San Francisco was overwhelming at first. The pace, the culture, the sheer concentration of innovation. But Taiwo adapted like he always did, with determination and humility. He worked 16-hour days, learning everything he could from his colleagues. On weekends, he took online courses to supplement his knowledge. The company sponsored his master's degree at Stanford, which he completed while working full-time. His thesis on blockchain applications for financial inclusion in Africa won awards and caught the attention of several investors. When 3 of his colleagues decided to start their own fintech company focused on remittances to Africa, they asked Taiwo to be their 4th co-founder and chief technology officer. The company launched with $2 million in seed funding. 18 months later, they had processed over $500 million in transactions and were valued at $150 million. Taiwo, who had grown up in a market stall in Oyingbo, was a millionaire before his 30th birthday. Meanwhile, back in Lagos, Obika's life was unraveling. His music career never took off. The album he had poured his school fees into was released to crickets, a few hundred downloads, mostly from friends and family. The music industry he discovered was brutally competitive and required not just talent, but business acumen, connections, persistence, and luck. Without his father's financial support, Obika struggled. The luxurious life he had taken for granted evaporated. He moved from the family mansion to a small apartment in Surile. He took odd jobs, waiting tables, driving for ride-hailing apps, anything to make ends meet. He tried to restart his music career several times, but without money for promotion or production, his songs went nowhere. The few friends he had from his rich days disappeared. Turns out, when the money dries up, so do most relationships. Depression crept in like fog. There were days when Obika couldn't get out of bed, couldn't see the point in trying anymore. He had thrown away the golden ticket and there were no second chances. He thought about reaching out to Taiwo. He saw his old friend's success on social media and in tech magazines, but shame kept him silent. What would he even say? How could he face the friend he had once called jealous, the friend who had warned him and whom he had ignored? It was Taiwo who finally reached out. 5 years after their graduation, on a random Wednesday afternoon, Obika's phone rang. The number had a US country code. His heart skipped a beat even before he answered. Taiwo? Obika, my brother, how are you? There was so much warmth in Taiwo's voice that Obika almost broke down right there. Instead, he lied. I'm good, man, really good. How are you? I've been seeing your success. You're doing amazing things. There was a pause. Then Taiwo said, gently, Obika, I'm coming to Lagos next week for a conference. Can we meet? They met at a quiet restaurant in Victoria Island. When Obika walked in, he was shocked by how much Taiwo had changed. His old friend wore an expensive watch, carried himself with quiet confidence, and looked every inch of a successful tech entrepreneur. Obika, on the other hand, wore his best shirt, which was frayed at the collar, and felt like a beggar at a banquet. But Taiwo's face lit up when he saw him. He stood up and pulled Obika into a tight hug. My brother, I've missed you. They ordered food. Taiwo insisted on paying and caught up. Taiwo talked about San Francisco, about Remit Fast, about his mother who had retired from the market and now lived in a nice house in Lekki that Taiwo had bought for her. Then he looked at Obika and said, now tell me the truth. And Obika broke. He told Taiwo everything. About the failed music career, about his father cutting him off, about the odd jobs and the struggles, and the nights when he wondered if life was worth living. He told him about the regrets that ate at him daily, about the opportunities he had squandered. Taiwo listened without judgment, his eyes full of compassion. When Obika finished, Taiwo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, do you remember what you once told me when we were kids in your mother's car, driving back from the market? Obika shook his head. You said that true friendship isn't about what you can get from someone. It's about being there through the mountains and the valleys. You said that to me when I was worried about being a burden on your family. Taiwo leaned forward. Obika, you made mistakes. Big mistakes. But you're not defined by your worst decisions. You're my brother. And I'm going to help you, not because I pity you, but because that's what brothers do. Taiwo's help wasn't a handout, it was a hand up. First, he connected Obika with a therapist, a friend from Stanford who had moved back to Lagos to start a mental health practice. Before we fix anything else, Taiwo said, we fix what's going on in here. He tapped his temple. The therapy was hard. Obika had to confront uncomfortable truths about himself, his entitlement, his lack of discipline, his tendency to blame others for his failures. But slowly, session by session, he began to heal. While Obika was in therapy, Taiwo enrolled him in an intensive coding bootcamp that Remit Fast was sponsoring for underprivileged youth in Lagos. You are starting from scratch, Taiwo told him. No shortcuts this time. You're going to learn a skill that can actually sustain you. Obika wanted to protest. Coding? Him? But he swallowed his pride and showed up on the first day of class. It was humbling to be in a classroom with teenagers, some of whom were younger than 20. But for the first time in his life, Obika applied himself completely. He remembered Taiwo's words from university. When you're serious about something, excellence follows. He studied late into the night. He asked questions. He failed, struggled, and tried again.
and slowly something remarkable happened. He got good at it. The discipline required for coding taught him lessons that music never had. He learned that mastery requires consistency, that shortcuts lead nowhere, that real achievement comes from sustained effort over time. 6 months into the bootcamp, Taiwo offered him a position, junior developer at Remit Fast's new Lagos office, which was expanding to serve the African market better. "You'll start at the bottom," Taiwo told him. "You'll make a fraction of what our senior developers make. You'll have to prove yourself every single day. Can you handle that?" Obika, his eyes bright with determination, said, "I can and I will." 3 years later, Obika stood in the Lagos office of Remit Fast, which now employed over 200 people. He had worked his way up from junior developer to team lead, managing a group of talented engineers. He still wasn't making Taiwo level money, but he was financially stable, respected in his field, and most importantly, proud of what he had achieved. His father had reached out 6 months earlier. They were taking things slowly, rebuilding trust that had been shattered. Mr. Okonko had been impressed by Obika's transformation, though he was too proud to say it directly. But when he quietly asked Taiwo how his son was doing, the pride in his voice was unmistakable. Obika still played music, but now as a hobby, a joy, something he did for himself rather than for fame or validation. He had released a few songs independently, and while they weren't hits, they were genuine expressions of his journey. People who heard them said they had depth, wisdom, hard-earned maturity. One Saturday afternoon, Taiwo asked Obika to accompany him to Oyingbo Market. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said mysteriously. They drove through Lagos traffic until they reached the market, now modernized with better infrastructure, but fundamentally the same chaotic, vibrant place where two boys had once played with bottle caps. Mama Taiwo's old store was gone, but her legacy remained. In its place was a community learning center that Taiwo had funded, a place where market children could come after school to use computers, read books, and dream bigger dreams. "This is where it all started," Taiwo said, looking around with nostalgia. Two boys from completely different worlds, brought together by tomatoes and mothers who saw beyond their circumstances. Obika smiled. "And look at us now. Look at us now," Taiwo echoed. Then he turned serious. "You know what the difference was, Obika? It wasn't intelligence. You were always as smart as me. It wasn't even opportunity. You had more of that than I could have dreamed of. Then what was it?" "Perspective," Taiwo said. "I knew that education was my only ladder out of poverty, so I climbed it like my life depended on it. Because it did. You thought you didn't need the ladder because you were already at the top. But what you didn't realize is that no one stays at the top without effort. Privilege opens doors, but only hard work and discipline keep them open." Obika nodded slowly. "I wasted so many years learning that lesson." "But you learnt it," Taiwo said, clapping him on the shoulder. "That's what matters. And now you're teaching it to others, to your team, to the young developers looking up to you. Your story isn't about the fall, brother. It's about the comeback." They stood there in the market, two men in their early 30s, successful in their own ways, bound by a friendship that had survived everything life threw at it. "You know what's funny?" Obika said. "When we were kids, I thought I was the one doing you a favor by being my friend, the rich boy condescending to play with the poor kid. And now? Now I know the truth. You saved my life, Taiwo. You and your mother, you saved me in ways I'm still discovering." Taiwo shook his head. "We saved each other. That's what real friendship does." A year later, Obika was invited to speak at Covenant University's Career Day. Standing before hundreds of students, he told his story with unflinching honesty. The privileges he had wasted, the wake-up calls he had ignored, the painful journey back from rock bottom. "I stand before you as a cautionary tale," he told them. "I had every advantage: a wealthy family, access to the best education, a brilliant friend who tried to guide me, and I threw it all away because I thought I knew better. I thought hard work was for other people. I thought privilege exempted me from discipline." The auditorium was silent, students hanging on every word. "But I also stand before you as proof that it's never too late to change, that your worst mistakes don't have to define you, that with humility, discipline, and the support of people who truly love you, you can rebuild from the ruins of your own making." He paused, looking out at the young faces before him. Some of you in this room come from wealth, some from poverty, some somewhere in the middle. But I'm here to tell you that your starting point doesn't determine your destination. Taiwo started with nothing and built an empire through discipline and vision. I started with everything and lost it all through arrogance and laziness. We both ended up in good places, but one path was so much harder than it needed to be. After the talk, students crowded around him with questions. But one young man stood back, waiting until the crowd dispersed before approaching him. Mr. Obika, he said nervously, I'm in my second year and I've been skipping classes to work on my fashion brand. My parents are furious, but I really believe in my dream. Obika looked at the young man, at his earnest face, his passionate eyes, and saw himself at that age. Let me ask you something, Obika said. Are you skipping classes because your dream is so consuming that you literally don't have time for both? Or are you skipping classes because you've decided that your dream exempts you from doing the hard, boring work of getting an education? The student blinked, considering. I think it's the second one. Then you're making the same mistake I made, Obika said gently. Dreams are beautiful. Chase them with everything you have, but don't use them as an excuse to neglect the foundations that will support you when times get tough. Because trust me, times will get tough, and when they do, you'll wish you had built yourself a foundation to stand on. He put a hand on the young man's shoulder. Get your degree, excel at it, learn discipline, learn to manage your time, learn to do hard things even when you don't feel like it, and pursue your fashion brand with the same intensity. If you can't manage both, then you're not ready for either, because success, real sustainable success, requires the ability to juggle multiple responsibilities and excel at all of them. The student nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. Thank you, sir. I think I needed to hear that. As Obika watched the young man walk away, he felt Taiwo's presence beside him. His friend had been in the audience, watching proudly. You handled that well, Taiwo said proudly. I had a good teacher, Obika replied with a smile. A friend who cared enough to tell me the hard truths, even when I didn't want to hear them. They walked out of the university together. Two friends whose journey had taken them through privilege and poverty, success and failure, estrangement and reconciliation. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real, and in its reality lay its power. Behind them, in the auditorium, hundreds of students were left to ponder their own paths, their own choices, their own dreams. And perhaps, just perhaps, some of them would learn the lesson without having to live the hard way Obika had. The lesson was simple but profound. Opportunity without discipline is merely potential wasted. Privilege without hard work is a house built on sand. And true friendship, the kind that tells you hard truths and lifts you when you fall, is the greatest wealth of all. As the sun set over Covenant University, casting long shadows across the campus, where two boys had once laughed and argued about their futures, one thing was clear. The story of Obika and Taiwo would continue to echo through the years, a reminder that where you start matters less than how you finish, and that it's never too late to become the person you are meant to be.